I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
So many things just don't make sense to me in this world. Rather than describe them right now, let's listen to the podcast and you'll see some of those things that don't make any sense.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Have you ever had like a sales job, whether you started a company or were doing sales for a company, where you had to, it was life or death for you, where you had to convince somebody of something?
No, and I couldn't do it because I'd feel fake.
Yeah, and so I've had to do it for many years, and it's horrible because you have to constantly, it's 24/7, literally 24/7. Like, I would be so close with my clients that they would call me at like 3 a.m. to tell me what's going on in their lives and their jobs, and I would have to do it because it meant tens of thousands of dollars of business or more. And so I would literally go to therapy about this. Like it's like I couldn't, it was almost like a cliche. I couldn't figure out who I was because I was all the time trying to get clients for businesses I was starting. And it's just a horrible thing because you have to go to the opera, or you have to go to someone's house by the beach, and I hate the beach, and or the whole thing, or you have to politically, agree with what they're saying, because otherwise they're not going to do business with you. And then you could say, well, you didn't stand up for your beliefs, then that's how bad societies continue. But I needed money. I needed to, raise my family. So
this is I'm a capitalist, but this is the issue. This is the downside to an extent. You end up having to compromise yourself for stuff. And I noticed that I've been in America for 5 days. It is stronger here. You notice it. And that particularly the tipping culture. I constantly feel like I'm being sold to by everyone I meet in America. And they're so nice and friendly, but it's so over the. It's like that film. Did you see Get Out?
Yeah.
And it was these black guys, but there's actually old white men inside them, and they're smiling in quite a creepy way. To me, that's how I feel. And I'm not actually. I don't enjoy. I love America. I love American people and stuff, but I don't enjoy that in the customer service world because it's too much.
Yes, because you don't know. Like if you're in a restaurant and they're like really nice, like, oh, where are you guys from? You don't know if they're. If they care, or they're just there. And there are so many techniques both my daughters work as waitresses, and so I've actually studied the academic research of how to maximize your tips, so I could tell them what to do. And there are so many
Go on.
tips. I'm trying to remember now because it was about a year ago.
Writing a smiley face on the tip.
Oh, I didn't know that one, but I think
They say thank you and put a smiley face on it with
I think
glittery
saying
pen.
your name is good.
Yes.
Reading menu items exactly as they're written on the menu, like you can't even be one word off, is very important.
Wow.
And I don't know why. There was a whole bunch of ones. I wish I'll write an article with that. Like that, it was fascinating actually.
That is amazing. I'll read that article. I love that. I love all that stuff. But like, I'm in a hotel and I go in and it's night and I've paid $300 for one night in a really not very nice hotel in the middle of Manhattan because that's what it's so expensive. Same as London, crazy expensive. And I go in and the guy is just so over the top and he's saying my name over and over. And oh, Andrew, come over here. Yeah, I'll show you. This is where you can go out if you want. And in the morning at 7:00, we got this amazing thing. And it's so, oh, you're going to love it. And just so much. And every time I came back in, he'd be like talking to someone else, like a friend of his or something, looking quite like morose, like his normal face. And he'd turn and suddenly his face would take on this supernatural quality. Oh, Andrew's back. Hi, how you doing, sir? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. And all it does is it's supposed to make me have a better time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It makes me feel creeped out and like, oh God, I've got to give him money. I don't have any coins or notes because I've just got a card. Should I go and like beep a card and say, here's $10?
I know, it's very stressful.
Ooh.
Like, and then you wonder, is every interaction, like, do I have to, like, if they tell me what directions, do I have to give them a tip? If they open the door for the cab, do I have to give them a tip? If they go fix the broken air conditioning in my room, do I have to give a tip?
Yeah.
Like, and you kind of do have to give a tip for everything.
So we talk about often on the left wing in China, the social points system, right? And that is happening in the UK now or the US with PayPal, right? PayPal have been banning users for wrong thought.
Yeah.
So you now have to have the right thought. You can't have access to your money. They even released something saying, says Tim Pool anyway, I just got this from him, so I don't know the validity of it, but saying that they would actually just be not giving their money out now to people who had the wrong opinions. And then they took it back the next day, but PayPal's stock apparently plummeted after saying
Right, I
that.
think they said they were going to fine you $2,500 if you were spreading misinformation.
How scary is that?
That's very scary because, okay, they took it back, but that just means it's going to happen again for real at some point. Like now, everything that's like, oh, it's bad, it's a little bit bad, but so we're sorry, we're going to take it back. At some point, it's going to happen, and everyone's going to be totally fine with it. Well, like Andrew Tate, who I just did the podcast with, he's an example. He has a business or had a business, and it was all running through Stripe, for the payment processing, and Stripe canceled him because I guess they agree with, the rappers who have total, like they're just killing people left and right in their songs. That's no problem, but like, some guy was making an impression on, young men and it's totally inappropriate. So they cancel him.
I've seen it happen there's a biologist who I interviewed who said, he didn't agree with gender fluidity and he got banned from PayPal. And he was always so polite about it.
He was banned from PayPal?
Yeah, PayPal banned him for that. And yet, again, I mean, are murderers allowed to use PayPal? PayPal probably wouldn't check, would they? I bet murderers can use PayPal, but not people who have wrong thought. So that's really scary and that's happening. But what we don't think about as much is probably the capitalistic version, which I think comes through tipping. Because you've got a whole society of a service industry that have to behave and modify their social behavior around you so that they can maximize their profits.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. And so I always wonder about this. So in other countries, if you don't tip, if you do tip in some countries, it's almost like not good because you're making everyone else look bad.
To an extent, I think most countries now, probably because of America leads the way in so many things. I think the UK follows the US a lot, particularly with politics, often 6 months later.
Yeah.
Similarly to how that happens in academia first in each country and then filters down over the next few years and then everyone does a thing. So I think most countries now that I've been in, I know Argentina, France, you are expected in nice places to leave 10%, but that's 10%.
10%, yeah. So here, 10% is considered like they might chase you out of the restaurant and say, hey, did I do everything okay? Like what happened? What's wrong?
Yeah.
You only tip 10%. It used to be 20% was the high end. Now I think that's normal. And I think really, and Jay, maybe like 25 or 30% is sort of, I want to say that's expected now.
Yeah. Like, have you been to like any of the cafe and you have a tip, it starts at 20%, 25, 30.
Yeah, like even Uber now is like, The last one is either 25 or 30. I think they experiment. Like also these companies, particularly the digital, they experiment all the time with different numbers to see what people respond to. Like, do they respond to like 21 versus 20, or if you have options. So
it's the maddest thing. I had to pay €70 to get dollars to get a taxi to the airport in New York. That's they don't know how much I can afford. And then afterwards, I had a nice rapport with the guy. And the guy, because we spoke, he wanted to be a podcaster. He was very excited that I was a podcaster. And he was even to the point that he was calling up his girlfriend and saying like, praise the Lord, I got a podcaster here. Everything's going to be all right. And I had to say like, oh, I can't really help you. There's not much I can do about, even my own one is not going to, so there's not much I can do. He's like, oh, no, you're going to help me. And I had to give him my card and everything. So now he's got my name and my card. So if I don't tip an extortionate amount in America. So I gave 20%, which, as you're saying, is probably not. He's probably disappointed. But what's that on $70? It's
$14.
I don't have $14 to just give out.
Yeah.
I'd rather. So tell me this. Can you explain to me what is? Because I know nothing about economics, finances, all this stuff. Why is America different in that respect?
Because a lot of jobs are allowed to pay less than a living wage because tipping is encouraged. So if you're a waitress, you don't need, or a waiter, you don't need to make the minimum. The restaurant doesn't have to pay you minimum wage, and the customers essentially are supposed to subsidize part of the waiter's income. And that's I don't know why that started or how that is, like why certain job categories don't have to be paid minimum wage. But those are usually the categories where there's tipping. And so then it really becomes, it's supposed to be an incentive for the waiter or waitress or the Uber driver or whatever to treat you nice, but then, you feel guilty or pressured. And then in hotels too, I've noticed lately, sometimes it'll say gratuity included, but then there's a line for extra gratuity. So it's totally a full 17% tip and then extra gratuity. And so I ask, do most people do this? And they always say, whatever you want, sir. And they're never going to give an answer to that. Like, whatever you want. And I'm like, well, what do people usually do? Whatever. People do whatever. So,
it just seems like, I've loved everything about America. I love the food. By the way, the food, because everybody talks about Italy and France. I've never enjoyed, I do like French. I've never enjoyed the food in Italy. I don't know. I don't get it. It's just greasy. I'm not going to offend the whole country. Greasy.
We're just shitting on Italy here. This podcast is all about just taking a crap out of Italy.
Mussolini. No, I'm a vegetarian as well, so it doesn't help. But I thought it would be filled with vegetables, all the olives and all the stuff, and it was just greasy, meaty, and like bread, and that bloats me and is not healthy, and I don't. Whereas here, oh man, and I know people go, oh yeah, well they've just taken other well great. That's the point. They've taken all the cultures and they've improved them. And you're not supposed to say that, but they have. And it's just everything's better here.
And it's getting really good now because of the pandemic. There's been an exodus from, let's say, the best restaurant, the best food cities in the US were probably in this order: San Francisco, New York, New Orleans. And then of course there's LA and Miami and so on. But they all moved. All those people moved, and restaurants opened up in other cities, and chefs moved. So now you're really starting to see great food in every city in the country. But I remember England. I first went to England when I was a little kid, and the food was disgusting. It was horrible. No offense.
That's a reputation.
But then when the channel started, I guess the same thing happened, where you started to get chefs coming around. It was easier to just travel and work other places, and the EU made things easier. So I think the food in England now is great. But when I was a kid, I remember, what the hell is this? This is weird.
Oh, I love it in England now as well. I mean, London in particular, as a vegetarian now, which I don't have strong feelings about. I just decided to stop eating meat, probably because I had too much in Argentina. But the best places are just the States and the UK, just to get, well, I don't know. There's a lot of places, of course, I don't know people. I always imagine listeners screaming, you haven't even been to Norway or something. So I don't know, but got to have that veggie food. But yeah, the tipping stuff, man, that's got to stop. And it won't, because it's just getting more and more in the States. Pay your staff.
Well, and also everything requires energy. And the more energy you use in a day, the tired you are at the end, which is why we sleep. Decisions take energy. So having to make a decision, this is why Steve Jobs would wear the same outfit every day. So he wouldn't have to make a decision on clothing. And having to make a decision right there oh, how much am I going to tip? What,
Doing
how is this
maths.
going to affect other things I'm doing today? Do I have enough cash in my pocket? Because nobody carries cash anymore. And
Yeah.
it's stressful. So all these little things add up and wear you down. This reminds me, though, of Jay's podcast idea. This doesn't make any sense. Because to the listeners, Jay thinks he's going to start his own podcast. He probably will at some point. But for now, let's just say he thinks he's going to do it. And we'll see if he actually does it. And his ostensible title is This Doesn't Make Any Sense. And so we were talking earlier about weddings. Like, you're going to have a wedding the summer after this summer, and you sent an invite around to people from all over the world. And my first thinking is, that might be rude. Like, you send a letter to someone who's halfway around the world. Hey, save the date, July 4th, 2024. See you in Iceland or wherever you're going to have your wedding. And now all these people now have to say, like, they have to start like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo. Like, I got to raise money to go to this guy's wedding. I barely know him. And I just think in general, like, I just think in general, I don't like to be invited to weddings. I've lost lots of friends over not responding to wedding invitations. I'm not only a bad email responder, I'm a bad wedding invitation responder.
There's something to be said for the not responding. And I think because I am now learning, I think, to not respond to everything, not to push everything. And I did have that with my best friend. Obviously, I was going to go to the wedding because I'm not you. No, but I went to the...
I've lost my best friend over this. So.
Oh, man. Well, I didn't want to go to the stag. Because the stag was in, do you say stag? Bachelor party?
Yeah.
It was in another country. So it was that kind of thing, and it was a few days. But more than that, I think similar to you in this sense, I don't like being out. I like being just chilled and in and watching a movie at home. And I don't like walking a lot. And I particularly don't like big groups of very loud, drunk people who I don't know.
Yeah.
And clubs and not sleeping well. So I called and said, how would you feel if I didn't go? And he sounded so upset. So then I went and I'd said something. So it was the double. It was, and everyone could tell. And I often didn't go to the same lunches and dinners and clubs. I just sort of went away. But I did learn it's better to do that just leaving the party than to say like, sorry, mate, I know it's a bit early, but I'm going to leave now. To just leave and vanish and not say goodbye. That's the best way.
Okay. Is that and I don't mean to cliche any society, but that's either called the Cuban goodbye or the Irish goodbye.
Yeah, I purposely didn't say those.
What's it called? Because Jay,
Irish.
You were describing to me that they're different, and I thought they were the same.
I thought Irish goodbye you just leave, right?
Yeah.
But Cuban goodbye, you actually, when you go there, you say hi to the host and take picture really quickly, then you leave. So you have like evidence that you were there.
That's
I see.
Good.
So with the first one, you just have to show up and but if no one knows you there, what's the point? I think they're the same. That doesn't make any sense.
No. Well, all I know is the Irish one, which we're not saying Irish people do, but that's what it's stereotypically called. And yeah, that's the best way.
I believe that. Like we did a dinner like that the other day where we went to the dinner. We left around appetizer time. Say goodbye, or we did say goodbye though. So you don't have to say goodbye with the Irish goodbye. I think you just have to say hello to everybody and then you disappear. So we did. We left early though.
I used to live in a part of France where you have to do 3 kisses on each person, like the cheeks, before
I can't stand that.
When you say hello and when you leave. And there are parts where you've got to do 4. And some parts it's 2. But where I was, it was 3. And I used to calculate it. Like, I want to leave. And I know that every person I talk to is going to go, what do you mean you're leaving? Because everyone hates when people leave and just because I want to go to sleep. And it's like, okay, there's 30 people here. That's going to be 90 kisses. That's outrageous.
That is. I wouldn't survive in that area of France. But like, yeah, but the thing is though, like, so does your fiance, does she feel the same way about social events?
She doesn't like kissing either. I'm joking, by the way.
But like, does she like is she a social person? Does she like going out to parties and stuff?
More than me. And I mean, as we speak, I hope she doesn't mind me talking about her, but she's at like a games night to play game, which you would probably like as well, wouldn't it, with the chess, or is it just chess?
It's just chess.
Okay.
Like games night is like what Jay does. So they go and they play something where like a medieval, game, and it's
strategy,
a big
though.
board. Yeah, strategy.
Strategy.
It is strategy. They're good games. I've played them with my kids, but I enjoy the original strategy game. So that's about it.
For me, it's TV. I gotta just sit and watch TV. I'm fine.
You know, you remember like 20 years ago, people used to be very much TV snobs. Like they used to, oh, no TV in my house. My kids will never grow up watching TV. But TV is a great way to be exposed to like great stories and great storytelling. TV is like a must for my kids.
Yeah. Well, that's that thing, isn't it? Like any new thing, and I'm not saying it was new 20 years ago, but it was still relatively, you know, it's only been around 50 years before that. Books were thought of that way as well. When books first came along after the printing press or whatever, they said like, oh, don't let them read that all day because it's no good for their brains.
Yeah, like in comic books was like that. TV, now of course, social media. People say about TikTok, about the 70 most talented people on the planet. Like, I'm still amazed. They're like, they are literally superheroes on TikTok. Like,
They are amazing.
They must die sometimes. Do they die? Like, if you're jumping from one building to another, what if you miss?
People do. You do hear about that. You hear about people, and a lot of Russians who they climb very high up and then they fall and they die.
Oh man, that's brutal.
It does happen.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
Hey, tell me about New York, because you said New York was dying. That was a big thing. Rogan was on about it.
Yeah.
And I was just there.
How was it?
It's insane. It depends what dying you're talking about. But in terms of just people, lights, stuff in your face, it was like, it was ostentatious almost. I've enjoyed my time more in Atlanta and DC just because it was amazing to see the New York stuff. But I need a break. It was mad.
And where were you in New York, or where did you stay?
I stayed in the Lexington Avenue, right next to Madison Park or something.
Okay. Yeah, I know where you're staying. So, and right there is actually, well, the park could get crowded, but right where you were staying on Lex, it's not as crowded as, like, let's say Times Square.
I walked there.
Yeah, and then downtown is very crowded. So I do think, look, I think New York's very crowded. My 2 of my kids live in New York, and they go to school there, they work there, and they love it. The problem that New York has is a little bit more under the surface right now, which is like in Midtown, which is not a nice part of New York. It's just office buildings, but it's only about 40% office occupancy. So the buildings are still empty, as opposed to 100% occupancy before the pandemic. And so if you only have 40% occupancy, a lot of companies will cancel their lease. They won't pay taxes. They'll move from the city. And New York City needs $100 billion a year to run the city. So if they don't make that from taxes, they're going to either have to raise taxes or figure out how to make money or fire people. So what people would they fire? Well, teachers, police, sewage workers, garbage men, first aid workers, hospital workers, so teachers. So that's what's beginning to happen in New York now, is that fewer and fewer services are being offered, and the city needs just as many services, but fewer people are paying taxes. So that's gonna be a bigger and bigger problem. Crime is already up, but it's up in every city right now. But crime's up a little bit more in New York City, and it's gonna be a problem. I love New York City. I hope it doesn't happen. Despite my title, I really hope New York City doesn't die forever. But I'm worried that I don't know what the solution is. How do you keep people in a city?
Yeah.
So,
do you remember where you were when Jerry Seinfeld talked about you?
Yeah, I was lying in bed, and I was getting all these messages, SMS messages, and everyone was calling me a putz. And I'm like, what? Why is suddenly like this Depression era insult a putz? Like,
is it Depression era? It's Yiddish.
It's like, but I feel like people didn't start saying it till like 100 years ago. I don't know when they started saying it, and they don't really say it now. Like, I don't say Jay, you putz, get the audio. I don't never use that word, but that was in the title of Jerry Seinfeld. The only op-ed Jerry Seinfeld has ever written in his life was this op-ed, and so I remember being in bed and I finding out about this, and I had like a mixed emotions. Like, I thought this was a week after the article had come out, and so I thought the anger had died down, but this created a whole new level of anger where everybody started like writing. They saw that Jerry Seinfeld was on board trashing me, so everybody started writing an article. And not only that, like Jerry Seinfeld was like, I was a comedian. I owned a comedy club right around the corner from Jerry Seinfeld's apartment, so he would go to the comedy club. He was like a hero to mine. We talked earlier, like you asked if we were talking about whether we ever cry. So I literally cried when I realized the extent of what was happening, and it was very upsetting. And I think that's part of the reason, like, I got just totally burnt out. So, and then other, like, he started trashing other states in that op-ed. So Florida, there was an op-ed, like, why is Jerry Seinfeld trashing Florida? Like, and making fun of Jerry. So it was like, this became this nationwide thing all of a sudden that was not intent. I was just writing my usual, I wrote an article every day. So I was just my usual thing. And it just got, I think it was like literally the last viral article ever. Like, have you read an article as viral as that? Like, since then,
No.
30 million people read that article.
Probably something by Barry Wise about the woman in the park with the dog that called the police in New York.
Oh, yeah,
That might have been before.
Yeah, but that was a video.
Yeah, but I think she wrote some op-eds about it as well.
Okay.
I
All right.
found out the truth of
Yeah.
it was a different truth and stuff. Well, you say
She's great, by the way. I love Barry Weiss.
yeah, she is great. We should get on her podcast.
Oh, or she should come on ours.
Yeah. Okay.
I used to write for the Wall Street Journal when she first graduated college. She corrected my grammar. That was
Wow.
And my grammar was always bad. But then I was so impressed with the arc of her career, like New York Times, and now doing this great newsletter. It's a very impressive career.
When you say you cried with the Jerry Seinfeld stuff, wasn't part of you also like oh, Jerry Seinfeld's talking about me?
I never felt that. I never, because I felt like he didn't really present an argument. He was just kind of trashing me. The one thing he said that was part of an argument is that people do enjoy going to work because that's a better way to exchange ideas. And he quoted like some sociologist, but it turns out that's just not true. Like, people don't, on average, the average person likes remote work better than some people like going to work, but they did a lot of surveys. More than 50% preferred not going back to work. So he was just wrong about that. That was the one kind of argument he made. And those statistics were known even then.
Yeah.
And everything else, he was just saying, oh, well, not a real New Yorker, this, that. I was born in New York. He was not from New York. He was born in Long Island. Anyway, I won't go into the whole thing, but it was just, I felt like he didn't really address it in a way that was reasonable. So it wasn't like a fun thing for me.
Yeah, it was quite disrespectful, wasn't it, Howie?
Yeah, because he's also just, saying I wasn't a real New Yorker, and a real New Yorker had to respond, which he wasn't, never has been. He's lived in LA most of his career, and then, lives in Long Island now. He has an apartment in New York. But anyway, I'm not in New York either now. I was in New York then, but I'm in Georgia now.
Yeah.
So I'm literally in the furthest place philosophically from New York that you could be.
It's sad though. It's that meet your heroes thing, isn't it? Like you're saying, and I don't know. I wonder if you have a bit of, when you're that famous and you're so many people's hero, I wonder if you have a bit of a responsibility. Maybe not. He can do what he wants, But I've seen him be a bit mean to a few people over the years.
Well, let me ask you this: like, have you ever insulted anyone on your podcast or in your writing or anything? And you write about people you can insult. You write about psychopaths and
not much. And I think I do imagine them reading it, and it's like I've gone behind their back. So there was one thing that happened with a guy who was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, who's like the king of the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, and it turned out that he was he did a lot of stuff about sex transporting and all these kinds of things to warn against because the Jehovah's Witnesses were doing all those things, and he was really against that stuff, but then admitted that he took a trip away from his wife to where was it? Was it Thailand? To sleep with sex workers who, anyone with a passing knowledge of those sex workers knows their history as well. And it was just a conflict of interests. But that wasn't really my thing. It's not my business. But I had interviewed him and not really addressed it properly. And a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses were very angry with me. So I had to speak to somebody who was on the other side who wanted to talk about what he had done. And he got really upset with me because I was essentially, I wasn't bad-mouthing him so much as having someone else who was. And I felt terrible. So I try not to do it. And again, not because I'm so wonderful, but because of that clapping thing again. I think I find it really hard to imagine someone sitting somewhere just reading something that I've written that's mean.
Yeah, it's they could feel really horrible. And also, there's also something to the point where, if somebody knows if I write about them, it's going to be favorable. Like because I always make it a rule. The only person I hurt in my own writing is me. So I will never hurt anyone else. Now, if someone writes to me and says, "Hey, you mentioned me, I didn't really like that," I will take the article down. So occasionally with my daughters, I'll say something, and one of my daughters was once really little. She was like 10, and I wrote something about how she was sharding. And she called me up and she's like, "I can't trust you anymore."
Oh, no.
And so I instantly took that article down. But I really make it a rule never to say anything badly about someone in an article. And someone you could say that's not being honest, but I'm being honest that I don't like to even think that way about people. So
it's one of the most difficult parts of being or having a public platform. People might think it's like, oh, look at Rogan spreading misinformation or whatever it might, or how do you deal with people? One of the hardest things is being careful with private information of friends and family of yours, because you want to bring out experiences from your life, and you don't know how delicate that is for those people. And I definitely have made mistakes with that early on, and it must be difficult for my fiance sometimes. She's very, very private. Even saying she's very private, I'm thinking, oh God, will she, because everyone's different. And I am someone who goes, blah, and that was, I wanted to set you up with Justin Hall, who was the first ever blogger. And he had that issue. He was the first ever blogger from the 90s, and he put up all this stuff, but he put up everything about his life, including like pictures of his penis and stuff, because it looked weird and he wanted someone to tell him what it was. He was like a real exhibitionist. And he would tell stories about his life, but people started to get really upset with him and say things like exactly what you just said, like, "I can't trust you anymore." And it really got to him. And he had a big breakdown online, one of those ones where he was like screaming into the camera and crying and just going like, "I just wanted to, tell people stories, and now no one trusts me," and all this stuff. And
where is he now?
He is in San Francisco, and he's got a cannabis company. And he's a really nice, sweet
And he doesn't blog anymore?
Every now and then he goes back to the same blog and he writes. So he wrote about me because I interviewed him, which meant that I was on the oldest blog on the front page for like for quite a few months, because he didn't write again for a while after. So he still does it every now and then, but not properly, and he never writes about people's lives anymore. It really hurt him to realize that he had hurt other people.
Yeah, and I wonder, I feel like I haven't really written that much since that article. It really... Sometimes something can impact you and your whole life changes, for better or for worse. Like I switched to other things that may be just as positive, but they're not as, I've been writing every single day since 1990, and I no longer really do, just in the past 2 years, because when something really, one way or the other, like with him, it was, people feeling like they couldn't trust him. With me, it was an entire city hated me, including many people I knew. And it just affects you a little bit. So I basically stopped writing my usual stuff, but now I'm trying to figure out how to get back into it, maybe in a different way.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
You got to get back into it. I read it. I'm not a New Yorker, and I don't have that kind of nationalism anyway about a country or a city or whatever. So it read as quite not really offensive.
That's what I thought. And I started off with stories about how you always want to piggyback a message on top of a story. So I wrote the story of how much I love New York and why, and things that happened to me. So it would be pretty clear that I want this city to succeed. And, I think most people who claim to have read, it's like you're the person with the opera claimed to know opera, but all they knew were the greatest hits from the article that everyone else was saying. They didn't really actually read the article, or else they would have seen that I wanted a solution. I think a little bit is that usually I am very solution oriented in articles like that, and I couldn't figure out a solution. But it's very difficult. Like, I know it's difficult because I had on the mayor of New York City afterwards on the podcast, and we talked about it. We couldn't figure out a solution right there on the podcast. It's something that really requires a lot of thought and policy, and we'll see what happens. He's a very good guy. He became mayor after that discussion, and we were good friends before then, and now he's off running a city, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't know if it's, I hope it'll be saved. So, and then, so tell me more about your trip to the US though. You were on Tim Pool's podcast.
Yeah.
And
I got to hang out with John Ronson.
And John Ronson. Yeah. John Ronson's been on this podcast. He's a really smart guy. Tim's a smart guy too. He's very right wing.
Yeah, he's very right wing, and that was a weird thing for me, and because it's just a different thing from the UK. And I do try to be, for the UK, when we hear about guns, for example, we're just like, what? Like it must be 100% in the UK who are like want more control or for them to be banned. I try to be like, look, again, no moralizing, and just like it's a different culture, it's a different thing. Let's try and see it. It's still weird for me though to see a gun, which brings me to Tim Pool's house, because he's been swatted before.
Can you describe what swatting is? Because I had only just heard that term like a month ago.
Yeah, well, me too, because I was going on his show and someone told me about it. But it means
it's insane, though, this concept.
Somebody called the police, the FBI, I guess, on him and said, I don't know what they said about him exactly, but they turned up while he was in the middle of live streaming, like the FBI going into his house.
What they say, I don't know his specific incidents, but they might say, this is crazy, the instances that I've heard. They might call up the FBI or the police and say, I'm so-and-so and I live at this address and I just shot my wife and 5 kids and I'm just standing here in their blood, and then they hang up.
Yeah.
And then so the FBI or the police think they have a live real situation happening right then. So their guns are out and they're approaching the house, and you don't know anything. You don't know that somebody just called and claimed to be you and said this. So exactly. It's like a dangerous thing.
Something like that was said about Tim Pool. I'm not sure exactly what. And for him, that's obviously, that's why whoever his enemy is did this, because Tim Pool is very much focused on, survivalism and keeping all your stuff at home in case you have to like fight off the authorities. And then the authorities, there they are with their guns, I suppose, proving his point, going into his house and stuff with guns, which is scary. But I suppose it's not just that. He has a lot of enemies. He's always wearing that hat. I've heard him say, he wears that so he's not as recognizable when he's out or something. There's a video on YouTube of someone taking it off, and Tim goes berserk. Like, do you know that's because someone did it as a joke? Like, he says, that's people can recognize me and all this stuff. But because of all of this, he lives like out in the woods. It's not even I don't even know where he lives, but to do the podcast, you go out into the woods, an hour away. I won't say what city just in case, but somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. It's like a horror film, in terms of location. And you drive up, and as you're driving, there's like sign after sign saying like no trespassers, go past this point and you're dead. We've got guns aimed on you right now, which again for a Brit is just very scary. I guess for anyone it's scary to read. But I thought, well, I'm expected here, so I don't know. So I drove up to like the top. It's like a long driveway, and you get to this top of this thing, and there was a barrier again. So more signs, barriers, scary things. So I parked the car just on this slope, and I sort of walked around the side of the barrier and sort of to see who was there. And I get approached by somebody who is wearing like prosthetic breasts, like that teacher. Did you see the teacher with the fake boobs?
No.
There's a teacher in the US somewhere who it's a man who wears huge breasts, and I think he's doing it to troll woke people, but he's getting away with it and just teaching classes as just a guy with like breast like down to his knees. God. It's insane. But they were obviously doing a parody of it, like filming that at the house. So this person just comes up with the fake boobs, makeup, and just goes, "Hi, I'm Brianna," and it's some guy called Brian, really. And I was like, "Oh, hello," and I'm just like scared at this point as well. It's my first day in America. I don't know, and then more people approach, and it's just like all these people around. And the building that they do this in, I think it's his building, is enormous. Like it's a hotel almost, but it's his. And you go in and there's like a bar and there's this and there's that. There are loads of rooms upstairs. And then downstairs you go into a basement and there's like a skate park in there, a huge skate park in the basement. There's a huge cinema room. There's like a chicken area with chickens wandering around. So again, all this stuff for me, I'm a boy from London, like from a city. And this was just bonkers for me. And this guy was showing me around the house. I haven't met Tim at this point. And I just got the impression no one even knew who I was, like why I was there, that the producer had probably done it and they hadn't even remembered me. And the guy's showing me and he's like, and this is the collection of guns on the wall. And there's just like loads of guns. And I was at that point like, oh my God, where am I? I was really quite scared. And then there's the bunker, which again, I think he talks about in his show, so he won't mind me discussing, but just they're prepared there. And I've never seen a house like that. And then you go up, it's like several floors up. I just couldn't believe all of it. Like, is this YouTube money? I don't know. And then you're in the room and then you're with these guys and there's a lot of God talk, which I'm again not used to. I don't know. I think Britain is a lot more atheistic as a country, and I'm not judging. I'm just sitting there, sort of like soaking it in, just like this is what's happening. And there's well, I think God is this, and someone's well, God really is more of a manifestation. It's all this talk, and I'm just like, okay. And it was great fun, and they were all really nice. And oh yeah, Tim was just like, I met him. He's playing pool, and he just had an aura. And you have that aura. It's not necessarily anything about him, but it's just all of this is around him.
Right. He had his vision had created this environment.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's a weird thing to sense. It's a weird thing to be in the presence of somebody who's created that all around them. And he's playing pool with a woman who works with him. I don't know. And I was like, oh, hi. And he was just like, hi there. And that's it. Like, and I just like, oh, what am I doing here? It's so weird. But it was, really bizarre experience. And then finished, and I said, well, I better go then. And they're like, huh? Oh yeah, okay. And then I'm gone, and that's it. And then they just do their thing every night, and 500,000 people watch every night.
How many, does he do a show every day?
Yeah, I think every day, or at least nearly every day.
Wow, it's a hard commitment. And you do 3 podcasts a week.
Yeah. Part of the difficulty is, I suppose, getting guests, which I guess they don't always have to do because there's 3 or 4 of them anyway. They've got, it felt like a sort of, Manson clan.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these 3 numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, Get reliable forecasts and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James. Do you ever feel like you shouldn't have guests? Like you should just talk about stuff? Like we're just talking about stuff now.
Yeah, but I don't know how bored everyone is listening.
I always just assume if we're having fun, then everybody's having fun.
Yeah.
If you're having a party, everyone wants to come.
I like the idea of a regular show where, say, it was me and you every week, or I do this thing with Sean, of course. If we did it in person, and maybe there was a third person, so it doesn't have to be a new guest every time. Then, because
Right.
you three talk about the topical news, people get to know the characters, which is you. That's good. But on my own, I know because you've said that you've sort of studied some of the podcasters who do that. They can just and,
Yeah.
and you do it as well, don't you?
Sometimes we've had some success with having like, let's say, a 7-episode story. Like I brought on my former business partners from 2000 through 2010, and we just talked about all this insane like Wall Street stuff. We called it Wall Street's Insane, and that was just a hilarious podcast and was fun, and I enjoyed doing it. And it was not guests as much as just telling stories.
But they are guests, aren't they? Because they're not usually on your podcast.
Right, they're not usually on it. I very rarely have done it where it's just me.
I think you have to really have a lot of confidence in how interesting you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that much confidence in how interesting you are as a person, you're unlikely to be that interesting.
Well, I'll say there's an exception. Tim Dillon's podcast is, if people haven't listened to it, they should listen to it. It's just insanely good, and it's just him ranting the entire time, and he's so funny and smart, and not everything he says is accurate, but he knows that, he admits it, and he has a funny view of the world. So it's very interesting. Some comedians do it well. Like some comedians translate their comedy well to podcasts, some don't. But Tim does it very well.
It's a tough one. I've thought about it a lot for YouTube because I know that could be really popular. You build up your YouTube channel with the big interviews, but then you do 5 to 10 minute rants about something that's happened in the news.
Yeah.
But I find I like the gray space more than it's very difficult to rant about. Well, it's not quite that, and it's not quite that. It's somewhere in the middle. You can't really rant like that.
Well, and Tim Pool's interesting because he's doing topical. So he's ranting. He has, and I don't mean in a bad way. Like he has a very specific, well-researched opinion. Whether you agree with it or not doesn't matter. Clearly, millions of people do, and he'll just and then he has people who bounce off him, and he bounces off them. But he's the main person, and he's very topical. It's the news that day.
Yeah.
So we find that the topical stuff. I don't know. You don't do a lot of topical stuff because you're researching, somebody who maybe committed a crime years ago. Like you're usually not interviewing someone who's committing a crime today because then they'd be going to jail. Like they're on the run.
Yeah. Well, and because my opinion's not it's too middle, and I think yours might be as well compared to him, compared to Ben Shapiro, compared to people like that who've got really strong opinion one way. That's easier to rant.
Yeah, and also with their audience comes from their opinion. So like I don't know if my audience probably doesn't come from my opinion because I sort of feel like I like to play a bigger game than just the political one where I don't really care that much and there's more important things to talk about. But a lot of people love politics and the game of it. And, not even the game of it, but like a particular side versus another side. And that we never do because then it's like you were saying, like you have to be open-minded, and if you just only believe in one side, you're never going to be open-minded.
Yeah.
But he gets a lot of audience from that, and Ben Shapiro gets a lot of audience from that, and on the liberal side, there's a lot of audience from that too.
Yeah.
So if you want a lot of audience, it's definitely good to take sides, I think.
Yeah, but you put yourself in a difficult position then, don't you? You've got to continue that.
Yeah.
So then that's why people on the left and right are often accused of being shills or grifters or whatever, because nobody can have that strong of an opinion every single time that something relating to the right or the left happens.
Right, and it happens to just coincidentally match every other opinion shared by the left or right.
Right.
Like even when in COVID, like even which medicine you took was either Democrat or Republican. Like one medicine was a Trump medicine, so it can't work, and another medicine was a Democrat medicine, so that one must be the one that works. Like, and you had to, but if you took the Trump medicine, you also had to be pro-life and pro-gun. Like, it was crazy how eerily coincidental, like, everybody's opinions were, like, if you were on one side or the other.
Well, the abortion views, the way that the abortion views and the death penalty views align is really interesting in that respect.
Right, pro-life and pro-death.
Yeah.
Well, are they pro-assisted suicide?
Few people are. And that's something I've changed my mind on, because I was pro that. I thought that was, and I interviewed a guy who invented a machine to kill people. Philip Nitschke is funnily enough his name, like the Nitschke. And he's Australian, and he campaigned for years and years to change the laws there. And he made a machine that would make it so that he didn't have to push the button or anything like that. So basically, he put people into a little computer program, they would sit down in like a chair that he'd made, and on the screen it would pop up, "Are you ready to die?" or whatever, and they would push yes, and it says, "Are you sure?" and then push yes again, and then at that point the machine administers, poison into their arm, and they die. Which is freaky, thinking the last thing you see is like a thing, "Are you sure you want to die?" and you push yes. That's really freaky. But he's really pushing for that, and they've got this whole community who all want it, and I totally understand why that is. But I never considered the downside of it, which is the beauty of making the podcast, because you get reaction from the community and you're able to consider it. So I was so pro that, because I'm a big libertarian, and if you want to die, you should be able to die, all this stuff. But what I didn't consider was the pressure people are going to be under when they feel like they're a liability to their family and they don't really want to die, but the family sort of suggests it and they feel like they sort of have to. That's a horrible thing.
That happens?
Yeah, of course it must do. It just of course. Imagine someone's dying, it's taken them years to die.
Yeah, like if someone's really sick.
They're really sick, and but they feel like they're a burden on their family. They probably are. We don't like to say it, but they are a burden. And then what if that family is a bit like, "Well, did you hear about that Switzerland thing?"
Oh my God.
Yeah, that feeling. So that is like the main argument against it. If you make that legal, it allows for, especially, and there are, unfortunately, we don't like to think about it, there are a lot of children who want their parents' money. I had another guy called the Coffin Confessor from Australia, also Australia, and he goes to people's funerals to reveal the secrets of the dead person. So the dead person will approach them a few months before dying, or a few weeks, approaches the Coffin Confessor and says, "I'm dying, but like I know that my brother was, having sex with my wife."
Wait, this is a real thing. It's not like a psychic thing.
No,
this guy advertises himself like, "You tell me your secrets, but a few months before you die, and then I will go to your funeral. And whatever your secrets you want me to share, I'll share."
Yeah, he does it.
And they pay him
$10,000 Australian dollars, which is probably 8,000 American.
That is the weirdest profession I have ever heard in my life. And I'm also wondering, why aren't there more people doing it? That's the easiest job in the world. Like, just listen to someone's secrets and show up at the funeral.
He says the same thing. Although to have the goal to actually turn up and do it, and he's really quite like abrasive. I've had him on quite a few times. He's a great guest. You should get him on.
Oh yeah,
you got to get him. So he really and he's very sweary, and he just gets to the funeral and he says like while they're doing the eulogy, he gets and goes, "Right, the man in the casket's got something to say, so sit the fuck down." Right, and they all sit down. Apparently, this is how he tells it. And he gets up and he says, "Right," and he says that so and so was cheating on the wife of this person, and this wasn't right, and you were all bad to him. And it's revenge at the funeral, because what an embarrassing thing to be found out.
Oh my God! But I guess you have to kind of like be real dominant in personality, because people are going to start arguing and yelling with you.
Yeah,
you have to make sure everyone's just disciplined and taking your orders, and so you can finish what you're saying.
Well, one of his stories was a biker gang. And one of the biker gang guys who died was gay and wanted him to read that out. And that was very intimidating. But he said, like, "Look, let me say it. And if you don't like it, then kill me."
What was the most disappointed his audience has ever been? Did the husband who died admitted cheating on the wife and the wife was just devastated, or like?
I'm not sure, because the ones he tells, you'll have to ask him, I guess. The ones he tells tend to be more revenge. So it's not that, "Oh, sorry, I was cheating, to the wife." It's more, "You were cheating, and I knew the whole time, and you've been caught." Oh my
God, that's brutal.
He does that. He also does other services, like a lot of people pay him to pinprick the body. So he goes and sees your body and pinpricks to make sure you're dead. and they asked to bury them with staff, which is illegal. So he sort of slips it in, and also to clear out their homes. He talks about an 88-year-old pensioner guy who asked him to clear out his basement when he died. So when he got there, the guy died. He went to the basement, and it was a sex dungeon.
So I guess somebody would hire someone like that because independent person, and his family doesn't have to be shocked by what they find when they clean this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want the family to know all
What a
that
fascinating job. And he gets paid $10,000 per dead person?
He said it depends on what the job is. If the job is just like go and pinprick the body, it's less. If it's like go and shout this in front of loads of people, then it's more. They sort of discuss it a little bit. It's a pretty crazy job. How did I get onto that though? Oh, assisted suicide. He said often it does happen where because he gets close to the dying person in the last few weeks often, and he sees how the kids often start, getting involved and asking about money, where it's going, who's getting more. It happened, I'm sure people listening will have experiences with that. They'll know some family members who've gotten like that. So that does happen. So you can imagine if someone's, that ill and it's legal assisted suicide, you can see how someone can get pushed into it. That's not me saying I totally disagree with assisted suicide as making that legal. I'm just saying like it's not as simple as I first thought.
Yeah, I don't know what I tend to be libertarian in that kind of thing. So I guess that would make me for it. But I think it's a very tough issue because people could be depressed or down temporarily and make a decision that they would have regretted later, but they can't because they're dead.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've had on like the most fascinating guests. I feel like I've had on good like guests that I admire and look up to, and I read their books and I'm interested in what their books say and I want to ask them about it. But you have like these weird, like like last time you were talking about the psychopath. Like I've been thinking a lot about that one. That was like a very interesting conversation you had with him. And now this guy, like what would you say is the most, not the weirdest, but the one that has had the most impact on you?
There's two of them, right? So episode 6, I always remember the numbers just because these two had such a big impact on me. Amanda Knox as well. I love talking to her.
And that's another one that I've like quoted you to other people about Amanda Knox and the psychopath aspect of it.
Oh yeah, she's great. And I don't think she's a psychopath, but yeah, that status stuff we talked about before, she doesn't have to prove anything because her status as a virtue thing is at rock bottom anyway. So she's just open and she's great. Episode 6 was with a person who's attracted to children, and he's an 18-year-old from Germany who is the class president of his school, or was at the time of the interview, and obviously nobody knew, and that's what he did. So he did loads of things with the classes and things with the kids. He said he never ever actually would do anything like that, but he has the attraction. So that was just something that was like, I wanted to do that because I just started my podcast and I thought, no one's done this. That's what I was looking to do.
Yeah, because so since he's never done anything, he hasn't committed a crime. So that's why he's available to go on your podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So he must have written about it like, I'm attracted, but I've never done this.
He hasn't written much about it. I had to go and delve into their community in Germany. So I was living in Berlin. What shall I do next? I'd made this TV documentary about exorcism and another one about abortion. I want really contentious issues. And it so happened in Germany, they have the world's only clinic that doesn't report these people. I hate saying these people, not saying the word, but YouTube does demonetize it. But it doesn't report them to authorities. So they can actually go in and get help, which sounds mad and sounds crazy because you want to punish and you hate them and you want them to have to go to prison and stuff. But the German clinic believe it actually helps. So I went and met the clinic, and then they set me up with some of their patients. And through them, I met more and more and more of them over a period of about 1 or 2 years, going to have little meetings. I went at one point to a small town in the middle of Germany and met a female one because that's so rare. And it was a 25-year-old woman who, again, these were all people saying they would never, these were non-offenders who were, because the point was they were going to therapy because they didn't want to offend and they needed help. Somebody who was going to offend wouldn't be doing that. They would just be offending. So yeah, met with her. And then through all these people, I also met this guy who said that he'd come on the podcast and talk about it. So it was the first time he'd done that. And it was fascinating. And it was just interesting because there were clearly cognitive biases he was showing. He said things like, I would never offend, but I have to be around children because I love them in a platonic way as well as, attraction. And if I'm not, that's going to be a problem. And I said, yeah, but if you're not around them, you can't hurt them. And he was like, no, I'm more likely to hurt them if I'm not with them. I have to be close to them so I don't fall. And it just felt like someone who's, has
He's
addiction.
like rationalized his whole being.
Yeah. Well, someone with addiction, it's like, no, I need to be near that pub because, it was that. So that was episode 6. And episode 53 was a chat with a guy who was one of the survivors of the plane crash in the Andes from Uruguay, who they were
the soccer team one?
Yeah, it was rugby. And they had to eat their friends. So, asking him about what it was like to have to eat human flesh and things like that. So that was pretty out there.
And I know there was a movie about it or a documentary or whatever. They didn't kill anybody. They just waited for people to die and then they would eat them.
Yes. Yeah.
We think,
exactly. Apparently they all sort of offered up their bodies to one another. They were all quite religious and they saw it as some sort of body of Christ metaphor, which enabled them to do it. What else can you do? What they survived is like the more you look into that story, the more insane it is, because they didn't even have like shoes on and stuff. They were wearing shorts. They'd never been to cold weather before. They were from Uruguay going to Chile. It's just the Andes are right in between. And then they crash land in this blizzard, and they're wearing like shorts and a t-shirt. Loads of them died on the impact, like the pilots included. The back part of the plane. They basically landed on a spike, and the back part of the plane fell back down into the snow, and it just went like as if it were water. The snow, it just splashed down into it, and they all suffocated. Everyone in the back half, and the front part. The guy I spoke to is a guy called Coche Inciarte, and he was on the back row just before it split. So it's unbelievable. He looked behind him, and his best friends weren't there anymore, and he was just like torpedoing down the mountain until they eventually sort of crashed into the valley, which squashed, obviously, the pilots. They died, and all the chairs and all the people then went straight forward into the front, and most of them died, leaving, I don't know how many it was, but let's say 30 or so still alive, and then gradually many of them died from their injuries over a period of days and weeks. And it took, I can't remember how long now, but months of living off of dead bodies and melting snow to drink it, because you can't drink snow because you get frostbite in your mouth. So they had wine bottles that they put the snow in and held it up to the sun in like minus whatever degrees it was. So it very gradually, by night they had like 3 drops of water to share between them. So
oh man, how long? So it took. How long did it take for them to be found?
I think they weren't found. The search was given up. I can't remember how many days it was. It was a lot though. I think it was like 3 months. So if someone's listening, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I think it was like 3 months. And eventually 2 of the guys, they were in just the worst state ever, all of them. And I think 3 guys at first, they said, we're just going to set off over that mountain and see what happens. And they were wearing like socks and walking in the snow. And they went off, and then one guy turned back. And in the whole way, they are carrying backpacks full of meat of humans to eat on the way. They had to eat it frozen as well, because if you cook it, apparently there's less meat. So you have to eat it frozen. That's what they did. And those 2 guys went off, and I can't remember how many days it took, but they eventually got to a river in Chile, and they saw a guy, like a farmer, just across the river. They couldn't cross the river, and they just screamed to him, and the guy put 2 and 2 together, because the whole nation, well, in Chile and Uruguay, knew about what had happened. And so he then had to drive like 9 hours to the nearest town to get the police and stuff, and then they got them, and then they sent helicopters to the place. So it's one of those things with emotions. When it gets you, it's not hearing the sad bit. It's like in movies, it's hearing about the survival. So I was talking to him, and he was telling me, we had to do it in Spanish. It's the only one I've done not in English. So I interviewed him in Spanish, and then I got someone to dub over him later. But I'm so happy I did, because, but to hear the story and to hear the bit where he starts to explain how his fiance and his mum, they gathered in the local square in Uruguay because news had reached them after months that there were survivors, which was just the most insane thing ever. Everyone gave them up for dead. And it was on the radio or something in the town square, and they listed the names of the 14, I think, survivors, and his was like the second last name. So you can imagine just sitting there, then you hear that name, and he's alive. Like, So then they just took all of them the next flight to Chile. He had lost so much weight. He was almost unrecognizable. He said his first shower in the hospital, it like knocked him off his feet. And then he heard the voices of his family because they'd come. And so when he was telling me that, I got very emotional. It was probably the most emotional I've been on the podcast, just hearing that story.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, you've had like fascinating, I mean, I feel like I've had fascinating guests as well, but those stories are so impactful, and it also shows just how crazy life is.
Yeah.
How many, just all these stories that are just to the edge of what you think is possible.
Well, that's what we were talking about before. That's why, so mine has to have that because it has to entertain. As much as it educates a bit as well,
Yeah.
It has to entertain. Whereas yours, you really try to enlighten and educate people.
Yeah, so like for me, the educational part is natural from the guests, and then I have to make sure it's entertaining. So it's a different style, but it all gets you to the same place, which is getting listening to something that's entertaining enough while you're driving or working out or walking, and then learning something from it in the process, and that's why podcasts exist.
Who was your most impactful or surprising guest, apart from me?
I don't know. You ever have that? Like people probably ask you that a lot, and I just asked you that, and I actually don't really have an answer. Like
You've got to have a ready answer for that.
Yeah, I don't. I have to kind of look through the guests. Like after 1,200, I've forgotten a lot of the guests too. So I don't know. Each one's different. So I don't really know. They've all had some impact. I'll say Coolio now because rest in peace. He died last week, and I actually was really excited to talk to him because it was my favorite song as a kid. So every now and then I'm often intimidated by the guests because it's like, oh, this is so and so who when I was 15 years old, like I loved this thing they did, and so that's usually has some impact on me. But yeah, all the guests have been pretty interesting, pretty much, almost all of them.
Yeah.
But Andrew, thanks so much for this is the first. Is this the first remote podcast, or this is the first real podcast I've done in person in a really long time? The first one here, certainly, and first one in years, probably. So thanks so much for coming here. Like in your one trip to the U.S., you've been north and now you've been south, and for a podcast in each region, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming here.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
And what's the main podcast that people can find you on?
On the Edge with Andrew Gold. It's on YouTube, Spotify, all the things, What about yours? Because I'm going to put this out on mine as well, aren't I?
Yeah. You, by the way, it's very good. I find it's very good to put on my podcast when interviewers interview me, because that's the way I get, stories that I've never told before on the podcast get out there. And so mine's the James Altucher Show. I hope people subscribe and listen and follow. And Andrew, once again, thanks for coming over here.
Thank you. Yeah, my guys, they'll follow. They'll follow you. They better do.
Excellent. And vice versa.
Entresto, sacubitril valsartan tablets, is the #1 heart failure brand prescribed by cardiologists and has helped over 1 million people with heart failure. It's a prescription medicine that treats adults with long-lasting chronic heart failure and works better when the heart cannot pump a normal amount of blood to the body.
Don't take Entresto if pregnant. It can cause harm or death to an unborn baby. Don't take Entresto with an ACE inhibitor or aliskiren, or if you've had angioedema with an ACE or ARB. Don't take with aliskiren or within 36 hours of taking an ACE inhibitor. The most serious side effects are angioedema, low blood pressure, kidney problems, or high blood potassium. Angioedema is swelling of your face, lips, tongue, and throat that may cause death. If it causes difficulty breathing, get emergency help.
Ask your doctor about Entresto. To learn more, visit support.entresto.com or call 833-446-6699. For pricing, visit Entresto.com/cost. If you can't afford your medication, Novartis may be able to help.
It's time to save. Clear the Rack is on at your Nordstrom Rack store. For a limited time, take an extra 25% off clearance. All sales are final. Hurry, shop this sale at Nordstrom Rack today. Please see nordstromrack.com or ask a store associate for details.